Scarsbrook. That is him. He wrote Monkey Chronicles. Good book. I'll give some questions. Okay, what inspired you to write your first book?
What inspired me to write my first book? Well, my first book was called Cheeseburger Subversive, and it's basically a coming-of-age novel that follows a character named Dak Sifter from grade 6 to his first year at university. And I guess what inspired me to write it was I had written 3 separate short stories that I thought if I changed the main character in the short stories to the same guy, that it would make an interesting book to find out what happens in between to change him from this kid he is in grade 6 to the young man he becomes by the time he reaches university. So that really inspired me. And to put it simply, I wanted to write a funny book about a guy growing up.
Do you have a specific writing style?
I would actually have to answer no to that. I think every book I've written has been a little bit different. I don't like doing the same thing over and over again. For example, Cheeseburger Subversive is considered a pretty funny book, and I wrote it in kind of a light, engaging style, and the chapters are episodic. They tell one story at a time and it adds up to a bigger story. Comparing that to, say, my third book, Destiny's Telescope, which is adult literary fiction, and there's more of a concentration on the sound of the language and sort of the feel of the work, and the themes are a little more serious. And then the Monkey Face Chronicles is a bit of a blend of both. So, yeah, the answer is no. I don't think I have one style. I try to go on a different adventure every time I write a book.
Okay. How did you come up with titles for your books?
That is a good question. I actually have a little mini lesson that I teach in my college creative writing course. It's called the 3 Rules to Great Titles. Here are the 3 rules to great titles. Rule number 1 is use great sounding words. More important than anything, your title is your first contact with your potential readers. So the title has to sound cool. The words have to sound good together. The second rule is the words in the title should create some kind of question mark or some kind of friction. Like, for example, the Monkey Face Chronicles. It's the word monkey face makes you think, what is this about? Creates a question in your mind, right? My first book title, for example, Cheeseburger Subversive, they're 2 words that don't seem to belong together. So that's the question mark. It makes the reader ask, what's going on here? The third rule of a great title is the title needs to connect to something important and specific in the story. So it should have something to do with something a character says, or something a character does, or a climactic moment in the book. And if you can do all 3 of those things, usually you'll have a really great title for your book.
Is there a message in your novel that you want readers to grasp?
In the Monkey Face Chronicles?
Yeah.
I'd say the principal message in the Monkey Face Chronicles, and you've read it, right?
Yeah.
It's a complex book with a lot of different themes. But the principal theme is, I guess, our society's compulsion with slick surfaces, with things being pretty, rather than with the internal content of people. And I wanted to create a main character in the book where, by any definition, he's not a pretty character. He's not slick and beautiful on the outside, but he's quite talented and capable and beautiful on the inside, I would say. So that would be the main theme of the book, is that it's what's inside that counts, and I wanted to create a character that really showed that.
Okay. Do you think your books are realistic?
I would say for the most part, I think reviewers would call my work realistic. It's not fantasy, it's not science fiction. It's meant to mirror reality to an extent. I like putting unusual characters in unusual situations in the real world. So in that respect, I think all the books I write, I try to make them realistic. That they're unusual stories that could happen in real life.
Are experiences based on someone you know or events in your own life?
In the Monkey Face Chronicles, no. The story in the Monkey Face Chronicles is completely made up. It started with that idea I mentioned before, I wanted to have a character who wasn't conventionally beautiful but had great inner value, and the story kind of proves some points about that. But on the other hand, a couple of my earlier books, like Cheeseburger, Subversive, and Fabulous Bipeds, are based on experiences I had quite a lot. Cheeseburger Subversive was based very loosely on things that happened to me to some extent when I was a teenager. And Fabulous Bipeds is based partly on things that happened to me when I was playing drums and rock and roll. So again, it varies. As an author, you can do both. You can completely make up a story that makes a point, that makes people feel the way you want them to feel, or you can write a book that is loosely based on your own experiences, and you have to figure out what the point is, why someone else would find it interesting.
What books have the most influenced your life?
Oh boy, there's just so many. That's such a hard question to answer. One author I mentioned when someone asks that question is W.P. Kinsella. I really like W.P. Kinsella's short stories. Have you seen the movie Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
And the book that it's based on is called Shoeless Joe. And he also wrote a series of books with Native Americans as characters, and there's a whole bunch of those. I loved those short stories. I thought he was one of the greatest short story writers ever. And certainly some things I learned from Kinsella come through in some of my work. Then, one of the greatest things that ever happened, Kinsella wrote a really good review of my first book. So I thought, yeah, this guy that I really admired wrote a great review of my work and made me feel like, yes, I'm a real writer, yay! So, yeah, and there's lots of other stuff too. I mean, I love classic literature, I love modern children's literature, I love sci-fi, I love fantasy, I love all of that. Here, let's all stick our hands up. Yeah, choose a home run question.
I got one.
Do you have any advice for other writers?
You can just go ahead.
Advice for other writers, or do you want to ask me something else?
Really
Advice for other writers, and this sounds like a joke, but it's not. If you have an idea for a story, sit down and start writing it. Step 2 is finish writing it. Step 3 is go back to it over and over and over again and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it until it's perfect. So step 1, sit down and start. Step 2, finish. And then step 3, go back and revise over and over and over again until it's great.
do you ever experience writer's block?
I think if you follow steps 1 and 2, the advice I just gave, sit your butt down at a desk and start writing and keep going until you're finished, you won't experience writer's block. I think if you decide that you want to be a writer, your life becomes a filter for stories. You kind of have this program that clicks on in the back of your head where you're scanning for new ideas for stories. And if you live life that way, you decide you're a writer, you have more ideas for stories than you can keep up with. So you really don't mind experiencing writer's block.
Wait, I had a question, but you can go again.
Okay. How long does it take to write one book?
Generally, it depends on the length of the book. It usually takes between 1 and 2 years to finish a complete book. I mean, the Monkey Face Chronicles is a 300-page manuscript, so but that time isn't all just writing and making things up. I'd say maybe a quarter of the time in total is writing first drafts, and the remainder of the time is going back to the material and improving it, rewriting it, and making it better. So that takes between a year and 2 years, and then you're looking at another year for the book to get through the publication process, where an editor or publisher works on it with you, they design the cover, they market it, and it eventually comes out. So it's a year or 2.
Okay. When did you first start to consider yourself a writer?
I always wanted to be a writer from a very early age, and I had some early English teachers encouraged me a bit, said that your writing is pretty good if you work on it and try to be great at it. Maybe you could. But I probably considered myself a real author. I mean, anyone's a writer. You sit down and write, you're a writer. I guess the first time I started considering myself an author was when I published my first short story, which was in a magazine called New West Review. So there you go. The difference between being a writer and an author is you can be a writer. Just sit down and write stories you want to write, and then keep sending them out there until someone notices one of them is good and publishes it. Presto, you're an author.
Do you think you could tell us a bit about your challenges getting your first book published?
Yeah, actually there were a couple. With Cheeseburger Subversive, a larger publisher was interested in it once it was finished, but they wanted me to take some of the four-letter words out of it, and I really didn't want to do that. And frankly, the editor there said, really, don't do it. It'll take the teeth out of the book. And then the publisher that I've done 3 of my 4 books with, Thistledown Press, liked the book the way it was and offered to publish it. I guess really the struggle wasn't so much in finding a publisher, but was in actually writing the book and completing it, and the work that it took to complete the first book. That was the hard part. Once the book was finished, there were a couple of publishers who were interested, so I was lucky to
Actually, I have one. What is your favorite part, like, in the story of Monkey Face Chronicles? Like, what's your favorite part of the story?
Oh, it's so, like you know, because you've read the book, it's got a complex plot, and there's a lot of parts that I really like. I think my favorite part as far as a beautiful scene is I love the scene where the 2 main characters, when Philip and Adeline go to Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and they're kind of falling in love with each other while they're there. I love that scene I really like Mount Pleasant Cemetery myself in Toronto, and
is it a real place?
yeah, it's it run. Well, anyway, yes, it's a real place in Toronto.
It's fun because living in Toronto, it's like a lot of these places I know.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like we talked about one taco place. I can't remember the place they were gonna go. It's like I've actually been there.
Yeah.
So it's
All the places in the Toronto portion of Monkey Face Chronicles are all real. And actually, I was very careful to make everything right. Like the path they follow walking through Mount Pleasant Cemetery, looking for Adeline's angel. All of the angels they encounter and all of those monuments they see are actually in there in that order. So you could go in and walk through the park on a certain path and see all the things that are mentioned in the book. Same with the couple of restaurants he goes to after the hospital part. They're just places that I like going myself. And I figured, well, I like the people that run these places, I'll mention names in the books. So, yeah, all of these places are real.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great interview. Your questions are very good. Thanks very much. Thanks. Thanks to the camera.